loaders influence shipping companies' political environment, and this is what we're going to talk about and discuss with our guest today. So we know that in 2023, the IMO has to decide actually on its new objectives. So today they are to reduce CO2 emissions by 50% compared to what they were in 2008. So that's quite a plan. So do you support this ambition to go further? Maybe that's a question to everyone. Otto, you want to start?
Yes, on that target, I believe it's not strong enough, not courageous enough. We believe that by 2050 we have to get the emissions down to 100%. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we will not reach the 1.5 degree target of Paris.
What about Matt?
I completely agree. The current ambition of IMO is simply not ambitious enough. We need a much more ambitious target. When it was adopted in 2018, it was a step in the right direction. We supported that, but now the world has changed, and the last 4 years, the focus on climate change has moved to new heights, and we simply need a new ambition now.
Right, so not ambitious enough, Caroline?
The thing is, you have to see that shipping is very global, so you have different pace around the world. The European shippers are quite keen, and ship owners are quite keen on going fast, but the rest of the world has to follow, so maybe that's why IMO chose this ambition, which is not, I think, what it should be more, but maybe that's why they chose, because nobody can. You have to remember that shipping is really the world around, so they have to consider people that can go fast and people can go slow, but it has to be more ambitious.
More ambitious plan. Otto, you wanted to add something? Yeah?
No, I think we have to look into it, who is influencing this, whether it's more the European and North American shippers in the container business versus the shippers who move bulk cargo, oil, grain, iron ore, which is a totally different set of shippers in the world. Mm-hmm. And that's why the majority of the consumer good companies, whether you talk Europe or North America, there's a need and there's a pressure to do something. And I think that's why we have to act faster in that respect, because the consumer on the street will put pressure on us. Mm-hmm. And we cannot have in 2050 still emissions in this industry, especially in the liner industry.
Right. And Pierre, from your perspective, what do you think?
But first of all, we see the complexity of this business because it's a global business. So majority of the other business have the ability to do it independently. Here we have to do a global vision. The global vision is important, but also it's important to associate the other business. Everybody forget about the fact that the maritime shipping is touching every single business, every single people. 80% of the trade is going through the shipping. So it has to be also a combination where the people who are using the industry, that industry also contribute to the solution.
All right, but what about the different players in the industry, the shippers, the freight forwarders, and the ship owners? Are they aligned? What can you say about that?
I don't think all are aligned at this point. There's clearly some who are laggers. If you look at the ship owner side, not all have the same ambition level. In Maersk, we already have an ambition of getting to zero carbon in 2040. But when you look across the industry, there's a lot who are not there. I think Otto mentioned before, there are other kinds of ships also. Mm-hmm. We are in container shipping. And there, the public pressure and the stakeholder pressure on those sectors is at a different level. Mm-hmm. But I think it's also important to say, and that's also supporting what was said before, shipping is not an isolated thing. It's part of a wider ecosystem with many different stakeholders. We see a lot of the the cargo owners who are starting to step up. We need to show there's a demand, and we believe that shippers, the cargo owners, have a crucial role to play to drive this development. They need to show there's a demand. They need to show they're willing to also invest into an industry that they use in their business. Right,
but the industry is moving. There's still a lack of commitment from some of the players. What could be the arguments behind it? Any thoughts on that?
I think the key issue is that in the liner industry, the big companies who move products around the world have to be ready to pay for green fuels, because we will not get green transportation for free. And that's one of the things which we don't like as a logistics company in our discussion with customers. Too many customers are asking us and said, yes, we want to do something, but we don't want to pay for it. It's changing, but unfortunately slowly only. And I believe we have to be ready, and customers have to be, we all have to be ready to pay for green fuels. We will not get it for free.
Caroline, what's your...
That's I would say it's always a problem of chicken and the egg, because if we want to reach these very ambitious targets, we have ship owners. Ships have to get new technologies, have to get new fuels. And this is now, everybody's looking for this silver bullet, and we don't have it. We don't know exactly what could be the next fuel. But if this technology has to go forward, if we want to have new technologies, everybody has to chip in. Not only the ship owners, also the shippers, also maybe the ports, maybe the state, maybe the European Union. So this movement has to be created now, because it's coming fast.
Right.
And we won't have the technology available for everybody if everybody's not chipping in at the same time.
And Pierre, it's not just about a question of money, right?
It's money is part of it, and I think you can hear about that. We need to finance the transition. There is a huge transition to finance. It's about changing the technology. It's not just to change a small thing. It's innovation, technology. It's about also global. So we need to involve. We need to involve also the way to finance. So we have banks which are like BNP Paribas, who finance the decarbonization and have program for that. They put 1 billion, but that's not enough. We have to bring all the other players from the finance industry. We need to create solution with the public sector, with the insurance sector, where we can create new tools in order to finance this transition. And if the corporates who are in charge of that business need to put some skin in the game, as we say, to show that it works, because they know their business, they need also to feel that the public sector and the private finance is behind them in order to support them.
All right. So now, what are the necessary transitions that are actually needed, to move forward and to reach the objectives? Maybe, Mats.
Yeah, it's a combination of different things that need to happen. There's a technological side. The technologies are actually known. It's not we need to invent a new technology necessarily. We actually have technologies that we know. They are not brought to scale. They need to be refined. We need, of course, also to further work on the technologies. But the technology is known. But that's only one aspect. We need the fuels. That's probably an even bigger challenge. How do we scale a global system, a global supply of a fuel that doesn't exist today, like green methanol or green ammonia? That's a major challenge. And that goes way beyond our industry. And because we are not a fuel producer,
right?
We need others to do that. So, and I think that's talk for what was also said before, that it's part of an ecosystem. There are many different stakeholders that need to play their part in this. I just mentioned two, right? Technologies, fuels, energy, but we also need regulators to support it, because it will cost money. Can we get the price down with subsidy from governments, for example, or from regulatory bodies, or through IMO? And then the last thing is the demand side, which is absolutely crucial. How can we get to a point where enough customers of shipping actually pay their part of the transition?
Alto, you'd like to build on that?
Adding to what Matt said, I think the regulator plays an important role here, and I believe personally we need higher CO2 taxes for shipping, because that would force the transition also. And the good news is, even if you have a very high CO2 tax per $300, $400 per ton of CO2, it's per container, per product moved in the container, per pair of shoes. If you move a shoe from Indonesia to Europe or to the US, the CO2 tax or the green fuel, the more expensive green fuel per shoe is so little. And that is, I think, the thing which we have to educate the consumer, because it will, liner shipping today, although it is consuming carbon fuels, it's still one of the most greenest transport modes compared to other transport modes. And we could get it for little money per product. We could get it green. So it's an educational process, and we have to get the regulators behind it.
Right. And Caroline, you agree from your observation position as a journalist, so you see the transformation of the industry. So what can you add?
I wanted to say the educational process of the final client, because you see that we're talking about new technologies, a new way of navigating, but also I think the consumer has to understand that maybe if you want to lower the CO2, maybe if maritime has to be a little bit less polluting, maybe it has to slow down. Maybe we were used to have a container ship going really fast and everything going really fast. But if the first thing to reduce CO2 is to slow down. So maybe it's a new way of thinking. And the clients also have to understand that maybe you had China, Europe in 55 days, maybe it can be 70, getting a bit slower, and it's a new way of thinking, because that's part of decarbonization too. I mean, everybody has to understand, from the ship owners to the end client, I think.
Right. So how do you see the emergence of low-carbon routes and shippers' coalitions? Maybe if you could add on that. So actually, are there initiatives that actually could push shipping companies to accelerate solutions and reduce their greenhouse gas emissions?
Yeah, I think some of those initiatives are definitely helpful. I think if you look at, for example, setting up green corridors, that can definitely drive that demand side. And I think through that we could probably prove that that setting up green corridors and have zero carbon transport will not hamper economic development and import and export, because it's an extra cost for sure, but it's still not a significant extra cost compared to what transport already costs today. So that could definitely help and pull things in the right direction, maybe accelerate things.
Quick reaction maybe on that?
On one hand, we support it because it could increase the use of green fuels. But on the other hand, you will have shippers in the world who will say, why can I only move it on that corridor? Because I want to move it on every corridor. So then we could start to contradict ourselves. So that's the question, because if you only do it in one, it will be a problem, because if you find supporters in the industry who say, I would like to move all my product worldwide with green fuels, I'm prepared to pay for it. So that's where we have to come up with a solution. And I think there are solutions in this respect. So it's good on one hand to have a green corridor, but on the other hand, we have to be careful that we don't restrict it only to that corridor then.
All right.
I want to add a comment there, because you're right, you have a good point. When you look at what the customers of shipping and logistics, what they want, none of them have an ambition to decarbonize shipping for the first one, and none of them have the ambition to decarbonize one corridor. They have the ambition to decarbonize everything they do, all of logistics. Maybe we can use corridors to scale things. I think that's the way we can look at corridors. But we should also look beyond shipping, right?
Yeah.
What do we do inland? Can we make
have a more holistic view?
We need to have a more holistic view, and we need to work on the inland part also, using electric trucks. We, for example, are starting to invest into electric trucks. Just invested into 400 electric trucks in California, and that of course needs to be then connected to what we already have on the ocean side, where, for example, could sail on biofuels today. In the future, actually in a couple of years, we will start to have vessels that can sail on green methanol. If you can connect the two, and then connect also the decarbonized warehousing, maybe electric rail, then you start to have these end-to-end corridors, and that could be more interesting for a customer of shipping. I think the problem is we often isolate shipping to be shipping. It's not.
We need to have a more holistic view on how we look at things. So we're speaking about solutions. So what development models actually do you see in the long term, maybe in the short, medium, and longer term, that could accelerate?
I mean, a short-term solution right now, which is available, is biofuel. So both for adding, it's not only for shipping but also for the air freight industry, sustainable aviation fuel, which is available, but unfortunately it's not available in these large quantities. But we are heavily promoting this, and we are moving the first products with both in the air freight side with sustainable aviation fuel at a higher cost, and also biofuel on the shipping side. So that's a short-term solution, because what Mats was saying earlier, all these green fuels, whether it's green methanol, green ammonia, bio-LNG, whatever will be there, it's not available in the next 2, 3, 4 years. It will only be available in a larger scale in the next 10 to 20 years. So it can be quite
tricky to plan ahead while the alternative are not there.
We need interim solutions, and there are interim solutions available today. And once they are being taken on by customers, that would automatically create scale for the new fuels in future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think short term it is in the same direction as you say. We have solutions already, for example, biofuels for different modes, starting to have electric vehicles, for example. I think short term it's really about further scaling that. And really showing there is a demand. I think it's about the customers, again, play a crucial role in showing that demand. I mentioned it before, but I think it's really, really key to this. So that's more the short-term thing. Further refine the technologies, start to bring them to scale, show there is a demand for it. If we look then more mid-term, then it's more about getting regulations in place who can really support this development, bring down the cost, and then further scale. If we look long-term, that's too late. I think long term, we need to solve this, to do this
now.
Today, and short term, mid-term is the issue.
Right. More proactive, yeah?
Yeah, we can only agree on that, and I think we will insist again on this, is the interaction. The solution will come by operating solution that need to be implemented as we move. If we wait until 2050 to find the final solution, it will be too late. And we need to innovate. We need also to work with the other industries. So that means hydrogen will be important, ammonia. So we need definitely to open to other industries. So the collaboration the ecosystem that we talk is very important. And also we need to include everybody. So not only the big company who have probably more resources, but the smaller company need to be there, and the port, which are this connection between the ocean and the land, are becoming more and more important. And maybe there are new business models that can be deployed and emerge, because we are doing things differently. We will use different type of fuel, and we can combine. I think later on we will have an example with Brest. So this kind of initiative can be replicated. Yeah. So and all we are. And this is where people like regulator have an important place to play, but also governments and also finance, because if they can follow and bring the finance behind that, it will accelerate the process.
All right. So what kind of dynamics do you see on the field? Do you see this, the different stakeholders coming and sitting together and trying to find solutions together? What do you see?
When we talk about transformation, I think it's about doing things differently than what we have done before. I see one big blocker of real development is that we have a really short-sighted business cycles in our industry. We're probably not the only industry. I guess most industries have that.
Yeah.
Where you look really short-term, a long contract can be 3 years. How can you solve a 30-year problem or 20-year problem with a really short business cycle? We need to innovate the way we work together. It should not be transactional. It should probably be more partnering. Partnering up to scale things, accepting that we should look at procurement different ways. If procurement is purely about cost, how can you then mitigate higher costs?
Absolutely.
That will need to be thought differently and be built into relationship. And then I think it's about those who are willing should do that and start to show that this is possible.
Right.
And then we'll get the rest on board. I don't think we can get everybody on board.
Right.
There is an important point, is that we have always addressed the decarbonization as a risk issue. And we see this as a risk to handle. We need to look at this as a risk, but also opportunities. And I think this is where we have to accelerate. This will create new job, new kind of industry, new type of. So we need to think about new business model, not only introduce new technology, new business model. We need the technology, of course, and that's what will probably be the one where we can start to collect all the resources needed.
So there need to be this shift of mindset. Maybe Caroline, if you can...
Yeah, I was thinking shipping has for a long time been isolated, be thinking like a silo. The ship was sailing and there it was. But I see now initiatives, especially in Northern Europe, which is more keen on doing that, where you have engine manufacturer, ship owners, shippers, ports, state, coming together, working together on long-term, let's say 5 to 7 years, because that's what you need when you want to innovate, and that it's not going to be other way because there's so much at stake. So everybody has to work together, and ship owners have to stop being in such a silo that they've been till now. I mean, not all of them, but some of them are moving faster, and some of them needs to be convinced.
All right, so there's still some work to do. But maybe one final question. How will the trade-off between the CSO strategy and the financial objectives will be made? Is there even a trade-off that we're talking about? Maybe, Pierre?
But first of all, each company has a balance sheet. So the balance sheet cannot be used and empty, so there is no more business. So I think the fact that we need to do a trade-off, no, it's we know that we have to go to that direction, and the 1.5% degree is there. So what is important today is to find a solution where, of course, the people will use the balance sheet, but also they can get support of balance sheet in order to put this plan. Those plans of transformation are also public. So bringing and combining public money with private solution is probably the way to go in order to support. If you ask those people to take everything in their own balance sheet, their business will disappear.
Right.
So it's impossible. The transformation that our friends here have explained is massive. So they need to have a way to transit, and after we need to create not only financial product but financial solution in order to help this industry to go to its transition.
All right. Matt, do you agree?
Yes, when we look, there's of course a trade-off between short-term finance and investing a lot of money into a new thing. So that's a major challenge. But we can also see that I think actually investors play a big role here, because there's more and more focus on investors on ESG ratings, meaning environment, social, and governance ratings, and that suddenly means that the financial officer can see in your company well, okay, if I actually improve this, I can get better access to finance. I can get lower interest rate. An example is we issued bonds, green bonds, to fund our new green vessel that will sail on methanol, and that was heavily oversubscribed, and we got the lowest interest rate ever. It's a proof point that something is happening in the investor.
Yeah, but that's great.
I would say when we talk about trade-off, I think those companies who embark on a green transition earlier will in the end also have a competitive advantage in the market towards a consumer, to whoever they sell a product in this transition. And they have to be courageous to do this. But I believe in the end, the consumer, and we have to become more transparent. There's one problem in the shipping industry. It's still very few people outside of this room here. It's a very introverted industry. The consumer doesn't really know what is going on there. It's not very transparent. If you ask the consumer how much CO2 it means to move a product, an apple from New Zealand to France, nobody really knows this. So once we make this more transparent, and then if somebody in this industry says, I move it green, then I think he will have a competitive advantage, and then the financial, they will be automatically even a positive trade-off. And we have to come to this point. We are not there yet, but I believe this will happen very soon.
Right, and this is what I
think we are aiming. We are actually going towards that. I think we can see that many of our large customers today are willing to pay extra, pay a premium for a green service. Not enough yet. We need to have more.
Yeah, but we are in the right direction, right?
You can mention companies like Electrolux or Nike or Levi's who are starting to put money into this, and with that, then I think that we just need a bit more, but it's super good to see that it's finally starting to happen.
And coming back to what Arthur was saying, Caroline, more transparency in the industry will help us also as journalists to do our jobs better and inform on this topic.
Absolutely, because it's true that we, as a journalist, I could see that there are many things announced by the shipping industry, being green and everything, and I'm spending a lot of time fact-checking that. But I also know that because some announcements are not as green as they look.
As they seem.
Of course, and but that's the rule, that's the game. But I think shipping has the power. Shipping is in the shadow, and I think it's bad because shipping is very important, and everybody should know about shipping. And I think
everybody's impacted by it. They don't realize it. That's the thing.
And this green transition could be the opportunity of shipping to be seen as an example, and because shipping has the power to create new technology because it's massive. You have so many ship owners, so many ships, the industry is massive. So and it could be now a locomotive for innovation because it has the power. So I think maybe this transition could be the good timing for ship owners and shipping and all the industry to set the example, to be the good pupil.
Fantastic. So I think the future looks bright. There are lots to do. Thank you all for your insights. It was great to have you on set.